This is your Sound Off Extra review for the Many Saints of Newark. This is the Sopranos prequel movie that David Chase has been working on for the past 3 years. There will be spoilers mentioned here, so if you do not want to be spoiled about the series or about the movie, then now is a great time to flip off, and you can come back to this later, so you have been warned. In my opinion, The Sopranos is the greatest television series ever made. When I get asked about what one of my favorite TV shows, like top 3 of all time, and I say this, put a little asterisk next to it because I still have not watched The Wire on HBO, and I have a lot of people telling me you gotta watch The Wire, and I plan on it, so we'll put that on the side for now. But I always think of 3 shows: The Sopranos, Breaking Bad, and The Shield. Those, to me, are the 3 greatest television shows that I have ever seen. And with The Sopranos, the tension in a lot of the episodes, the way it was shot, which was revolutionary at that time, to have this TV show that looked like a movie, but it was a TV show. You didn't see that. I loved all of it. And many times, many times, I have found myself going down the YouTube rabbit hole of old Sopranos clips that just, every now and then one will just pop up on my main menu or on the sidebar, and I watch one, and 1 leads to 2, 2 leads to 4, and before you know it, an hour has gone by. I love going back and watching a lot of those old clips, and every few years I try to, rewatch the entire series. And I still miss stuff that I didn't pick up on, the previous time. Not one redeeming character on the entire show, except maybe Adriana, and we all know how that ended, but I couldn't look away. It's a great show. So it pains me to say that this isn't a great movie. I think it had the potential to be great, but as a TV series that runs over the course of a few seasons, not as a movie. Now maybe it's just a David Chase thing, but this isn't Goodfellas. It's a movie based off a television show with characters that were fleshed out over a period of years. I think if they had time to flesh things out more with the early versions of these characters, it would have been better. Especially Michael Gandolfini, James's son. I really was curious to see how he would portray young Tony Soprano here on the show, and I thought he did a very good job. I just thought we didn't get to see enough of him in the movie. David Chase was not interested in a sequel to The Sopranos. He's always talked about the fact that he was not interested in doing that, especially after James Gandolfini died. I mean, how could you even do a Sopranos sequel without, Gandolfini? But he liked the idea of a prequel based in Newark. He used to go down there with his grandparents when he was a kid, hence why it was based in Newark around the time of the race riots in 1967. That's the time period of the film. I would have preferred they just kept it focused on the Sopranos story with the time they had. I don't think adding all of that other stuff really added much to the movie. I mean, there are references on the show, like especially in that first season, to that period and the riots in Newark. There's one episode in particular in that first season, and they recreate the scene in the movie, the carnival scene, where young Tony sees his father being arrested, and one of his friends gets shot by the cops. There's an episode of The Sopranos where they have a recreation in Tony's mind of that scene. That scene is in this movie as well, although it's a little bit different. Here in the movie, the guy gets shot in the gut. In the Sopranos episode, he gets shot in the kneecap. So there's a few differences there. But you have references to that period. I just don't think it added much to the movie, having so many scenes in the film that focused on the Italians against the African Americans and the riots and everything else that happened that year. So anyway, if you read anything about this movie in advance, it wasn't a big secret that David Chase was going to be including all of that. So I don't understand why people are so shocked. There's people who are very surprised from what I'm seeing. I can't believe they dedicated so much time out of the movie to this. But again, if you knew anything about the movie going in, I at least knew that it was going to be part of the movie. It's not really a big surprise that that was going to be part of the plot. The main character in the movie is not Tony Soprano. It is Dickie Moltisanti, the father of Christopher Moltisanti, Tony's nephew on the show. And on the show, Tony always spoke glowingly about Dickie as this revered figure and how tough he was, like a real man's man. He was a mentor to him. He was a mentor to Tony when he was younger. So it was cool to find out more about him in the movie. Although on the show, Chrissy talked about his father being an alcoholic and a drug addict. Remember the scene at the barbecue where he's talking to Tony and he says, let's face it, the great Dickie Moltisanti, my father and your hero, he wasn't much more than a fucking junkie. And that doesn't come across at all in the movie. So I guess that was a lie that somebody told Chrissy. Not the only lie that he was told, but I'll get to that. I thought the actor who played the role of young Uncle Junior was great. Corey Stoll. He was great. He looked like Andre the Giant compared to Uncle June on the show. Dominic Chianese wishes he was that tall. But they do say you shrink when you age, so I can believe that. Vera Farmiga played Tony Soprano's mother, Livia, who is a real miserable bitch of a woman on the show. And you see that in this movie as well. But we find out that she has mental illness of some kind that she refuses treatment for. She won't take these pills that might help her. Tony says, these pills, they could help you. And she sees that as a sign of weakness and flips out on him when he even brings it up. I actually think they do a better job of fleshing out her character than Tony's character. But I thought the actor that played Silvio absolutely nailed his speech and his mannerisms. He was great, especially in that last scene that he's in with Dickie. Ray Liotta is in the movie. He plays two characters, Dickie Moltisanti's brother and his uncle. They were twins. The uncle was in prison at the time. And there's a series of prison scenes where Dickie visits his uncle. And I don't know if this is what David Chase was going for, but it almost felt to me like they were going for a Tony Soprano, Dr. Melfi vibe. But they don't really serve much of a purpose. Again, this might have benefited from playing out over the course of a season, not just a 2-hour movie. But we got the money line from Uncle June when Tony was talking about trying out for the football team, and Junior, under his breath, says, he doesn't have the makings of a varsity athlete. I popped for that. The first time that Junior ever uttered those words. He doesn't have the makings of a varsity athlete. But the big question the movie answers is who killed Dickie Baltasanti. In the show, if you remember, Tony tells Chrissy that it was a dirty cop who got paid off to whack his father. And they were right outside Dickie's house. He was carrying TV trays inside when he got shot and killed. In that episode, he gives Chrissy the cop's address. This is when they're sitting outside the restaurant where the cop is having his retirement party. And they look inside, and Christopher is like, is that the guy? The guy with the sombrero on his head? And Tony just is an absolute prick. He's looking, he goes, well, it's kind of hard to see. And Chris can't see that Tony is looking at him. And he looks at him, he goes, oh yeah, maybe it is him. He's like trying to rile him up. Because someone wanted that guy dead. The reality is that this guy was a dirty cop who outlived his usefulness, and they wanted him gone. And what better way to get him out of there by telling Christopher that, hey, this is the guy that killed your father. It's entirely possible that he did kill Christopher's father. He may well have been the trigger man, because in the movie, we never get a good look at the guy's face. And if you think back to the TV show, right before he kills him, the cop is insisting to Christopher, look, I don't know a Dickie Moltisanti. I didn't do what you say I did. You're being lied to. You're being set up. But it is possible that maybe he was the trigger man. And, like I said, in the movie, we don't get a good look at the guy's face. It's also equally possible that he really didn't have anything to do with it. And he was telling the truth. He was just a dirty cop who retired, and now they don't need him anymore. And they want him gone. But as it turns out, it was Uncle June. It was Junior Soprano who called for the hit on Chrissy's father. All because Dickie laughed at him when Junior slipped and fell at a funeral. I think it was the funeral for Big Pussy's father. He slipped and fell. It was raining outside. And in the film, he slips, he hurts his back. And Dickie sees this and he is just laughing uncontrollably. And so that obviously angers Junior, and he never forgot that. And yeah, there was also a jealousy there. There's another scene where they're in the car with Tony's father, Johnny Boy, who's really, putting over Dickie and saying, why can't you be more like him? I think there was a jealousy there. The idea that we're supposed to have is that he was also jealous, and this may have been the straw that broke the camel's back. But that's what got him killed ultimately, is that he was laughing and making fun of Junior at the funeral when he slipped and fell, and it got him killed. Because Junior is a petty asshole who would do something like that. A lot of these guys are petty assholes. Let us not forget Ralph's line on the show about Ginny Sack getting a 95-pound mole removed from her ass and all the trouble that caused. Although you insult a guy's wife, I mean, you have to expect that there's going to be repercussions, but there's a lot of petty people on that show. But when Tony tells Chrissy on the show that the cop killed his father, I believe that he believes that to be the truth, because that was probably the story that he was told when he was younger. Had he known that his uncle is the one who took out a hit on his mentor, I doubt they would have ended up being as close as they were on the show. Yeah, that last scene in the movie, or one of the last scenes, at Holston's, with Tony is waiting on Dickie to show up. They were supposed to meet that day, and he's waiting and waiting and waiting, and Dickie isn't showing up, and Tony is looking out the window waiting for him, because he didn't know that he had already been killed. He was already dead, and he didn't know it. But Dickie was giving him the cold shoulder up to that point because he didn't want him to follow into the family business. He had had this whole conversation with his uncle, with Ray Liotta's character at the prison. And he said, you want to do right by that boy, stay away from him. Stop hanging out with him. Because he idolized him. Young Tony idolized Dickie Moltisanti. He looked up to him. He was like a father figure. Where his father had gone away to prison for all those years, 4 years, whatever it was. He didn't have a father figure around. And that's kind of what Dickie was. And he kind of filled the void. But you do have one of those scenes in the movie where Ray Liotta's character says, if you want to do right by that boy, stay away from him. And that's what happened. All of a sudden, he started giving Tony the cold shoulder, and Tony couldn't understand why. He couldn't get him on the phone. He went to go meet with him, and he didn't want to meet with him. So he had finally agreed. Syl had convinced him to meet with the kid. And that was the meeting that was set up, but he got killed. He died before he can make it to the meeting. Tony very likely would have wound up going down a different path. But Dickie got whacked before he can meet with him. And what happened? Tony got into the family business. And Junior is the one who basically took Tony under his wing and ended up mentoring him. So anyway, I like that they fleshed that out there at the end. But I think the movie was hurt by not focusing more on young Tony and his relationship with Dickie. I think there could have been a lot more on that. I liked the movie, but I didn't love it. And I wanted to. I really did. I wanted to love it, but I can't say that I did. So let me know what you think of the movie once you have a chance to watch it. Chime down in the comments below and let me know what you thought of the Many Saints of Newark, which may well be the final chapter that we get in the Sopranos story. I have not heard of there being any interest in doing another prequel movie. We know David Chase doesn't want to do a sequel. And frankly, I think you just leave well enough alone. I think there are people still looking for answers about what happened to Tony at the end of the show. There were rumors that Carmela, that Edie Falco was brought in, and actually I think that's a fact, that she was brought in to film a scene that would have aired at the beginning of the movie, and it got cut. And if you watch the movie, then you know the narrator for the movie is Michael Imperioli. It's Christopher Moltisanti. He's dead, but he's talking like, here's what happened. This guy died because of this, and I died, on this date in this place. He's doing the narration at the beginning, and it's, the narration is coming over a shot of a cemetery. So I almost wonder what the nature of that scene was that she may have filmed that got cut. If it was her in a cemetery, maybe we would have gotten some kind of an answer about what happened to Tony, or who knows. David Chase has always said it's up to the imagination of the viewer. He has never come out and said whether or not Tony Soprano was killed. I think that had James Gandolfini lived, that at some point there would have been some kind of, probably a movie, just to kind of, put a bow on things and give us that one final chapter. If they had all the major players, I think he could have been convinced and talked into it. And then I guess Tony would have been alive. My opinion, he was killed. Final episode of the show, lights go black. That indicates that he was shot and killed. And it goes back to the conversation that he had with Bobby Bacala. We didn't get Bobby Bacala Sr. here on this in this movie. Unless he was in there and there were so many different characters, it was sometimes hard to know who was who. They had, someone in there playing young Paulie, who I thought was okay, but, there's only one Paulie, let's be honest. There's only one person who could play Paulie Walnuts. I go back to that scene from the last season on the boat in the lake with Tony and Bobby, when Bobby's saying, how do you think it is when it finally happens? Do you think you feel anything? Does everything just go black? Does everything just stop? I always go back to that scene. I think that was a foreshadowing of what happened with Tony at the end of the series. But that's what David Chase wanted. He wanted everybody to come up with their own interpretation of how that show came to an end. And so I think that pretty much ends the Sopranos story once and for all. But let me know what you thought, and we'll be back with more very soon. We have a new Halloween movie, Halloween Kills, coming out in a couple of weeks. Maybe I'll pop out a review for that. I love me a good Michael Myers movie. So until then, be well, stay safe, have yourselves a great week, and I'll see you back here on the channel again real soon. Take care, guys.